Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. Today we have a review of Chapter 884, Who, which is the shortest chapter name we've had in quite some time, if not ever. And we're going to start things out with what we've all been waiting for what feels like an extraordinarily long amount of time. Luffy smacking Katakuri right in the stomach in Gear 4th and sending him flying. It's the first page of the chapter, and my god, is it just beautiful. I especially love that first panel, where the shot behind Katakuri as he's being hit. You can just feel the sheer power of Luffy's punch, with all of the environmental effects going on. The dust and debris is all cool and circular from the force of the punch. There's a strong point of impact on Katakuri, and even some lightning-esque lines springing forth here and there, to let us know that, yeah, this is pretty damn powerful. Honestly, this first page is just a masterclass in how to draw a punch. It's such a simple action, you'd think, but rarely when reading manga have I ever felt a punch as hard as I do here, even in One Piece, a series which is known for phenomenal punches. But moving right on, last chapter the general consensus seemed to be that Luffy had discovered a weakness in Katakuri's observation haki. As it turns out, that wasn't quite the case, and he realized something about Katakuri's devil fruit instead, but I'll go into that in a second. In my last review, I went over a couple of theories about what the weakness in Katakuri's observation haki is, and it turns out that the correct answer was the first and most boring idea I stated, in which Katakuri can't use his observation haki properly if he is unfocused. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of disappointed that this turned out to be the case and how Luffy got some hits in, but it does make sense. On the bright side though, we know where to go from here. All Luffy needs to do is make Katakuri lose his cool and the fight becomes even again, which is very possible because, Luffy just so happens to have access to every mirror on Whole Cake Island and can just go around shouting Katakuri's secret to whoever happens to be listening. But back to Luffy's discovery, I did think it was actually pretty cool that he realized Katakuri's abilities weren't like a Logia user at all, and that he just uses his future sight to shape his body in order to dodge attacks. Now, I don't know if this was planned by Oda, or if it is just him covering his tracks from when he originally made the Mochi Mochi no Miya Logia, but either way, you have to admit it's pretty nicely done. And this particular technique is something I could see Luffy adopting or, making his own version of if he ever managed to gain that sort of control over his body. The key thing with this technique is just how efficiently Katakuri is dodging, using as little energy as possible. Whereas most fighters would need to expend a whole ton of energy actually moving their bodies to dodge, especially against Gear 4th level attacks. Now, I know Luffy can't and really may never be able to use observation haki to the level of Katakuri, but I feel like everything about this fight is just somehow made to show Luffy just how well he could actually use his abilities, and I expect to see him use a fair bit of what we've seen here in the future. And the last thing about this particular part of the chapter, I loved watching Katakuri create floating mochi arms and then imbuing them with his next level armament haki to smack Luffy right in the gut. And really, I think this is the first time we've seen him take that sort of damage in Gear 4th form. And with that, this fight is starting to remind me a bit of Luffy vs. Lucci back in the Enies Lobby arc, which to date, still I think feels like the most brutal fight Luffy has ever had. So I'm definitely hoping for this to heat up with that level of amazing. Meanwhile, on Cacao Island, we have very much less interesting events going on, as Pound has arrived at the sweets factory just to see his darling daughter Chiffon. Now, I'm sure this isn't out of nowhere, and the guy will have some sort of important role to play, or at least inspire something important to happen, maybe? I mean, look at it this way. Pound is technically Capone's father-in-law, and given that we know how honorably Capone views his family members, I don't think it's out of the question for him to start a fight with anyone who wants to harm Pound. Oh, and what do you know, we just so happen to have the fourth son, Charlotte Oven, showing up this chapter and threatening Pound. Well, let's see how that turns out. Speaking of Oven though, I think he'd actually be the perfect opponent for Sanji during this arc if he does have a fight and, takes a break from baking a cake. Both of them can heat up their bodies to insane degrees, and they just have this sort of opposing combat style going on. Sanji obviously only uses his legs, while Oven seems to favor his fists in a very boxing-like manner. Either way, things are getting real outside of the factory, but things remain fairly boring inside the factory with the cake baking squad. Although Sanji did have one really cool line in response to Pudding telling him that Katakuri has never lost a fight. He just, plays it cool and says, well, I guess today will be his first loss, showing that his supreme confidence in Luffy has returned, and it's nice to have the old Sanji back. And finally, as suspected, there has been some shenaniganry happening with the sea slugs all across Big Mom's territory. It turns out that Praline has been singing to them, and they've all been making their way to her with very delighted looks on their faces. Now this is super important because now the Big Mom pirates cannot monitor any sailing activity in their waters, which means that the Straw Hats, the Fire Tank pirates, and the Germa are able to move entirely undetected. But what I really love about this is that it emphasizes something I've not really thought about before now, and that is just how instrumental the Charlotte family has been in the success of this arc, for one reason or another. Here we have Praline blatantly betraying the family because she loves Aladdin, while Chiffon has done exactly the same for Capone. Charlotte Opera was responsible for the fake death report of Nami and Luffy, just because he feared retribution if he told the truth. Brulee's powers were heavily abused to crash the wedding, and Pudding herself pretty much ruined the entire assassination plan. Whether they're willing participants or not, it really is the Charlotte family themselves who are proving to be the most important factors of success here, or failure, depending on what side you're on. The family is just gradually crumbling from within. They aren't a united front, and with so many of them either defecting or already defeated, the numbers are whittling down to a surprisingly manageable amount for the Allied forces to deal with here. Well, apart from Big Mom herself, but hey, all she needs is a nice cake and all will be good. And I think that pretty much does it for this week. Super exciting stuff happening here, and as usual, can't wait for next week. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe, and please do comment with your thoughts on the chapter. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.